Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1, action.
Assume nothing.
Rash, bald-faced blasphemy.
Question everything.
I find it extremely hard to imagine.
Open your eyes.
It is quite all right to be an atheist.
The fastest growing group of people in the country has been measured as being those who have no belief, or who are atheists.
You don't have to be apologetic or quiet about it.
Challenge the opposition.
You see religion on 100 fronts losing the argument.
And start thinking. This is The Thinking Atheist Worldwide.
For those of you who are going to be listening to the recorded rebroadcast of this show, I have many who listen live, but so many more will listen after the fact in the weeks and months ahead. It is now in the month of April. That means April 1st. April Fool's Day was just a few days ago. Now, I don't know if the rest of the world knows anything about April Fool's Day. Is it a worldwide thing? Do people all around the world do April Fools, or is it just here in America? Well, just in case, let me explain, okay? April 1st, April Fool's Day, the day when people make up stories and they play pranks on each other for a laugh. It's just a gag. It's a joke. And the pranks come in a million varieties, most of them pretty juvenile. People, you put bubble wrap under the toilet seat rim, so somebody sits down to go to the bathroom and it pops and scares the hell out of them. Somebody at your office computer, you're away, so they sit down at your PC or Mac, and they do a Google search for something like tiny penis. And then they leave the results on screen for everyone passing by your desk to see it. You tape down the handle of the sprayer next to the faucet on the kitchen sink, so somebody goes and they activate the faucet to wash their hands, and they get sprayed with cold water. Somebody tapes the little red laser tracker on your computer mouse, and you go through 3 sets of AA batteries, or replacing the mouse how many times to try to fix it. You never do see the little black duct tape or whatever sitting there. You take an open doorway, you stretch plastic wrap across the entrance, and you sit there and wait for some poor victim to walk face first right into the plastic, usually on video. I heard about one prank. There was a husband. He told his wife, he just bought a new dishwasher. Told his wife the new dishwasher was equipped with speech recognition technology. And he sat back while this poor woman stood in front of the washer going, normal cycle, normal, on, start. Nothing is happening, and of course the husband's sitting in the back of the room, and he's just probably in tears laughing at this poor unfortunate woman. At the end of the gag, whatever it is, when your victim has been properly skewered, you simply go, April Fools, and everybody supposedly laughs, and ha-ha, isn't it a great story to tell? There are a million of these things, okay? I had a friend of mine tell me a story about his college days. I guess he and some buddies went out to their college campus flagpole on April Fool's Day, and they somehow got hold of one of those boom lifts. In the Midwest, we call them a cherry picker. It's a crane lift with a basket. You put the guy in. They use them on telephone poles and whatnot. One of those man lifters. Over the course of several hours in the middle of the night, stacked dozens of old car tires up this metal flag post. I mean, all the way from the bottom to the top. Huge stack of tires. And this flagpole threaded up the middle. You got to think, no matter how angry the university president was when he walked out and saw this the following day, no matter how pissed off he was, no matter how much trouble it was to get the tires unthreaded from the flagpole, you had to think. The guy looked up and he admitted to himself, yeah, that's pretty impressive. That's pretty impressive. April Fool's Day. Now, I personally haven't done a whole lot with April Fools, okay? Call me a pushover. Call me a softy. Call me sensitive. But I don't think most pranks are all that funny. I mean, a few can be. I mean, really funny. But for my taste, most pranks, they're just annoying. Kind of childish and dumb, and they're usually not funny to the person who is the prankee. It's funny for the people watching, not the poor guy who had the kitchen sprayer douse him with cold water. You know, he's heading out the door to some function or to work or what have you. He's got to go change clothes. That's not funny for him. Or miss an important phone call when somebody connected his phone extension to another desk. Or made his heart stop when he walked into the bathroom and somebody in a Freddy mask jumps out from behind the shower curtain. That kind of thing. Call me a softie. Most of this kind of stuff is not really my speed. Sometimes, but not often. And then I read a few posts on the Thinking Atheist Facebook page, recounting stories of a few people, non-believers, who decided to pull their own April Fool's prank on their religious parents and families. Now, apparently, they told their mom and dad, out of the blue, that they'd seen the light. God had revealed himself and proven himself to them. They were no longer an atheist or agnostic or skeptic or non-believer. They had accepted Jesus Christ into their hearts. They were saved, and they were going to join their families in heaven instead of receiving eternal torture in hell. And, of course, the parents were delighted, ecstatic, enthusiastic. One guy, I think, even said his parents wept like tears of joy. And at the appointed moment, these people looked at their families and said, April Fools! I know personally, firsthand, the struggles of being an atheist in a religious family and a religious culture. I see and I feel the frustration that comes when otherwise reasonable people defend concepts, biblical concepts like invisible space beings and talking animals, curses, dinosaurs on Noah's Ark, an earth younger than the Sumerian civilization, that kind of thing. I believe the doctrine is worthy of mockery. But am I the only one who sees this particular April Fool's Day prank as just unbelievably cruel? It's cruel. When a mother and father raises a child, they're desperate to save that child from anything that might harm him or her in this physical world or in their mind in the spiritual one. So when they believe with all their hearts that hell is a real place, it's real to them, right? They believe it to their core, and they're charged to rescue you at all costs. It's hard enough for them to watch this child reject everything they've taught them, the entire foundation they were raised on, walk away. It's painful. It was the right decision for you, and you've got good reason. It's your right to own and live your own worldview. But the heartbreak your family feels, what, suddenly becomes fair game to be exploited as a cheap gag? Well, when do we become such lousy stewards of the responsibility that we have as free thinkers and as human beings to live our lives not just truthfully, but compassionately? To be the kind of people and to live the kind of lives that attract people around us. We're like a magnet. They just want to be around us. They want to know more. To be the kind of person whose word is good and whose word is a reflection of a good heart and strong character. Argue with your family. Knock yourself out. Reason with them. Raised voices? Cool. Set your boundaries. If necessary, keep a distance until respect is given. If you have to walk away, at least for a time, walk away. Be confused, be defiant, be frustrated, be happy, be something, but be something real. You know, don't take pleasure in manipulating the very real fears and the very real hopes and dreams of other human beings, religious or not. They're human beings. They have feelings. And while you can't escape the pain a religious family would undoubtedly feel knowing that you're an atheist, well, you can at least ensure you don't purposefully, maliciously hurt them even more with a cheap shot, a cheap joke that ultimately makes you look like a total horse's ass. It's irrational, it's illogical, it's sad, I get it. But your family has a very, very real fear that you're going to hell. So what can you do? What should you do? I mean, everybody's family is unique. Everybody's experience is different. People deal with this challenge in a myriad of ways. I honestly believe that the vast majority of freethinkers are good stewards of the relationships they have, as tenuous as they might be with loved ones during a difficult time. They extend the olive branch when they can. They do their best. I think there are a tremendous number of freethinkers out there who want to make peace or just want to live their lives. But it's no joke. For so many sons and daughters and husbands and wives and friends and loved ones, their families believe with all of their hearts they are going to hell. So if you fall into this category and you've experienced this from your family, that's what this particular show is about. It is about the intrusion. It is about the interjection. Call it meddling if you want, or maybe they just stand at a distance, but you know that they lose sleep at night worrying about where your eternal soul will end up. I want to hear your stories. Our phone number is at the top of the chat screen, and I've got a whole bunch of people who sent me emails. Shelley is not on the phones today, so I will refer to all of our callers by area code. Let me start with a message from Judy. It says, "My youngest brother no longer speaks to me. He's been horrified by the way I've raised my children, but why would I have raised them any other way? How could I have not taught them to think rationally and not to believe myths? He and some of my other siblings have said things to me like, 'I hope you'll be happy on Judgment Day when your children are sent to hell for mocking God.' By the way, both of my kids are well-adjusted college students, whom I'm extremely proud of." Judy, thanks for the message. Gabe sent me a letter. It's too long to read in its entirety. This is a portion of it. Gabe says, "My family is a bit different than probably most of those that you'll hear about. My parents, and by extension me, are the proverbial black sheep of the family. My mom's family is Catholic, and although they're not super crazy into it, some people are more devout than others, of course, belief in God is considered a given. My dad's family is Unitarian Universalist." I'm not sure I know what that is. I'll look it up. "So while they're not overtly religious either, such belief is almost considered a given. My mom is becoming more religious of late in an effort to help her deal with the numerous autoimmune diseases she has, one of which will eventually kill her. Her faith also helped her get through the death of her first child. My sister was born 3 months premature, as was I. She asked me once if I prayed. I said no. She looked at me with a shocked look on her face and said, 'You're not some atheist, are you?' I responded, 'Well, I guess you could say that, yeah.' She started to cry and then proceeded to rant about, 'How could you say that? My faith is the only thing that gets me through this. Why are you attacking my faith? Now I'm a failure as a mother,' and so on and so forth. This completely shocked me. My mom has always been and still is my staunchest supporter. Religion was never a topic in our house. It just never really came up. She'd always taught me to be who I was and to think for myself, so her reaction to this was no less than shocking. Even worse, after she told my dad, he would start lecturing me on how having a belief in God was so important. My mom at least acknowledged and admitted her religious roots the entire time, but my dad had never said a peep until that moment." Gabe continues, "Word eventually leaked back up the grapevine to certain members of my extended family, and I began receiving emails and cards basically begging me to return to the faith or be saved, or saying stuff like, 'I can't believe you would disrespect all of us like this,' or 'You're going to hell and I'm praying for you,' and so on and so forth. I deleted or threw them away without much thought. After all, several of my other relatives, all the emails were from more elder family members, didn't really like me or us anyway. Maybe it's because I didn't grow up with a big family, I don't know, but the way I see it, and this is very out of character for me, those that really know me know how low self-image I have. I am who I am, and if they don't like it, screw them. It's their loss. You just need to be who you are, and if your family doesn't like it and condemns you to hell like mine has, then maybe you don't really need them in your life. This, I'm sure, will be hard to swallow for those raised with big and or close-knit families, but I think it's the bottom line. It shouldn't be a matter what religion you do or do not hold. Family is family. If they choose to break that covenant, then maybe they aren't worth keeping in your life. Pretty hard stand, Gabe. And, you know, when it comes to blood, I'm in conflict over it. I have a devoutly religious family. I love them with all of my heart. You know, we take a bullet for each other. We're family. I have taken some pretty hard lines to establish boundaries in my own life. Distant relatives, you can have them. I don't mean to be totally callous, but I once told someone I would take a close friend over a distant relative any day. Just because we share a tiny branch on a family tree somewhere doesn't mean we have anything in common. We don't live in the same area. We didn't grow up together. We don't know each other. And I realize that sounds really cold. And there are many people who, if you're on the family tree, you're in. You're blood. It's, you know, I know people, they'll drive through on vacation, they'll drive through a state where somebody who shares part of their lineage lives in a town 100 miles away. He'll drive the extra 100 miles to go see his relative, distant uncle, because they're bonded, they're family. I don't believe that. I don't think just because we share, you know, some DNA that we are going to jive, so to speak. But close family, that's tough. Close family that hits pretty close to home. That's a very sensitive nerve. And different people deal with it in different ways. And I'm curious to hear how others have dealt with theirs. Area code's 863. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Thanks for waiting. What can I do for you?
Well, I actually live in pretty much the exact circumstance you described, as I'm sure plenty of the other listeners today do.
Your parents are believers?
Yes. Southern Baptist. And I live in Central Florida. And they understand that I explain myself as an agnostic to them. I'm kind of an atheist-leaning agnostic, really. Much more atheist than they really know. I'm a little bit shy to fully explain myself and my views to them. But they do know that I don't believe in the Bible. I've been very clear about that with them. To the point of early on, when we first started having this collision, I would openly ridicule the Bible and the Bible stories to them, and it didn't go over too well. But we sort of have found not so much a middle ground, because they certainly can't be moved from their heart, you know, their course, and I definitely have a hard line with mine. But we found a sort of a way of dealing with each other where we still, you know, the family love is still the predominant factor in the way we negotiate our lives together, you know. And we've both become adept at avoiding religious topics, but there was definitely a period of time that it was extremely, extremely difficult. And I've been told many times that I was going to hell. And I've had to deal with catching my mother crying, for instance, and I usually kind of feel like it's crocodile tears, but it's sort of like an invitation for me to ask her what's wrong. And this has happened a couple of times. I asked her what's wrong. You know, I'll bite. What's wrong? Well, I feel like I failed you kids. You know, we didn't raise you up in the church, and it just starts the whole debate all over again. You know, it's really pretty terrible to hear that she thinks and fully believes that myself, my sister, and my brother are going to burn in hell because we don't believe in the King James Version of the Bible and go to church every week 3 times with them and tithe 10% of our income, et cetera, et cetera. We don't do all those things. So therefore, we're going to burn in hell. It doesn't matter to her that we're all very good people who support ourselves, take care of ourselves, you know, take care of our loved ones, are responsible, law-abiding citizens that clearly have empathy and love for other people and donate to charities, et cetera, et cetera. None of that really matters. It doesn't matter because she very clearly states that you do not get to heaven through deeds. You have to accept Jesus Christ and believe in the Bible, et cetera, et cetera.
Forgive me. Tell me your first name, sir.
James.
Your circumstance sounds a lot like mine. I can understand the heartbreak a parent would feel. They say something along the lines of, if only we'd done a better job of showing you the love of Jesus, if only we had gone to church more often or studied the Bible more. I mean, they project your decision, your life choices, your worldview. They sort of project themselves onto it. And I don't know if it's, I mean, when do you as an adult get to the point where you get to choose your own path and it's not somebody else's responsibility? I know there'll always be parents. You'll always be the kid. You'll always be our baby. But when do you get to the point where you can just, you can decide for yourself and they're going to have to live with it,
I sort of feel like they've found a way somehow in their own minds to just treat us as family, love us despite the fact that we don't follow their belief, and to try to work on us. I do get the sense that they're trying to work on us in little increments. They think they're making some progress. I don't really know what they hope for the end result to be. Well, I take that back. I do, but I don't know how soon they expect it to work. I mean, it obviously will never work, but.
Well, James, I'm glad that you at least have a relationship. I mean, many people, they've, for better or for worse, cut the cord altogether and said, look, if you don't leave me alone. I
came close, but I have to say that the worst, my parents have been somewhat religious most of my life, but it was about 6 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, that they really started going to church full on, going, twice a week, 3 services a week, going to revivals even, because this is, again, Southern Baptist, and, becoming really hardcore. And it was the first 3 to 5 months or so of that new resurgence of the faith in them that caused them to start going, quote unquote, religiously to services. That period was the worst. It nearly destroyed our whole family. But once they got past that, they calmed down.
How old are your parents? What's their age group?
60, early 60s.
I think people 60 and above, and this is a gross generalization, and this is not scientific, I'm just making an observation. But James, do you wonder if maybe there's a generational thing at play? There's something about people who are seniors who their culture never knew what to do with the word atheist. I think they don't process atheism.
I fully believe that, yeah. I fully believe that it is absolutely a generational thing. I think even our some of our past presidents, people you think should be well beyond that, are very guilty of that same sort of phenomenon, where they don't even understand that that it's perfectly legal to be an atheist and we have all the rights. The president of the country made the statement that he didn't really think that atheists should have the rights of citizenship. I mean, it was either George Sr. or Jr., and I would need to kind of maybe Google that.
It was Jr. It was Jr. that made the statement, something about they shouldn't be regarded as citizens. I would encourage everyone to Google the quote to find out more. We're talking about people who really, and especially I think when you get to that point in your life, tradition and habit, if you change anything for a lot of people who are seniors, who are retired age, routine is something that they rely on, take comfort in, take pride in, and if you change much of them, and not all of them, certainly, I know there's some people out there who will, they try bungee jumping for the first time at the age of 80, knock yourself out. But for the most part,
I said, my parents, being in their early 60s, and they sort of live out in they live out in the countryside. They don't have a lot of really close friends really nearby, and for me, I eventually came around to the idea that I'm kind of glad they go to church. It gives them some sort of social interaction. They have a social circle now. They interact with people, and they have friends, from that. It's also made them to be quite judgmental in a lot of ways. But the only way that remains that I have difficulty in interacting with them is, once again, when they try to pull the crocodile tears thing to draw us into that conversation, or just when they just tell a ridiculous story, like something about the last one that nearly caused an open argument again was when I just fell out laughing at a dinner table one time when my mother just piped up and said, before the flood of Noah's Ark, before the great flood, rain had never been seen on the earth before.
Oh.
No one had ever seen rain before. It had never rained. I was like, really?
Yeah.
That's just special. And I just couldn't stop myself laughing, and it just got her so upset. She was so
well, I appreciate it. Great call out of Florida.
About it, so.
James, I've got a full switchboard. Let me try to get some other folks in, but I wish you the best down there with you and yours. I think my lady and I are going to try to do like a long weekend in Florida, and I don't know. I'm not sure where to go. Destin, Miami, Fort Lauderdale. We'll figure something out, but we'll be in your region here.
Come to Kissimmee. You'll be pretty close by my region. That's where all the parks are, all the amusements.
Sounds good, brother. Take care of yourself.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Two things come to mind. Have you noticed how people use hell like a trump card in an argument? So you're sitting down next to someone, a loved one, you're talking about the reasons for your disbelief. I've actually gone through this, and I see it so many times on my forums and Facebook page and YouTube page. What happens is somebody engages. They come to you and they say, I believe the earth was 6,000 years old. All right, they take the Hovind doctrine literally. The earth was created 6,000 years ago in 6 24-hour days. And there were dinosaurs in the Garden of Eden frolicking around with Adam and Eve, and it was just so beautiful. So now you're sitting there with a straight face. And you say something like, well, actually, and you speak about radiometric dating and the age of the earth and the Hubble constant and all of these scientific things. And what happens is that they are using the Bible as their foundation, and you are using scientific fact, scientific research and information. The minute they begin to feel overwhelmed, you see them start to check out a little bit, and then instead of arguing against the facts that you have put into position, they will say something like this: well, I hope you have fun burning in hell. People on the Facebook page do it all the time. I'll have these religious types come by, and they'll throw out something that's ridiculous, something like, we hadn't seen rain until the flood. I heard someone talk about how that there was a membrane over the earth that was filled with water. And whenever God unleashed the flood, he opened the membrane and all the water came down and flooded the planet. Well, of course, when you counter that with factual information and they start to get flustered and they don't know what to say next, and you can feel their temperature starting to rise and the blood's going up, they say, well, I hope you have fun in hell. It's like it's supposed to be a deal breaker for us. It's supposed to be the argument winner for them, and I've never understood it. And it really betrays their own lack of belief in biblical truth. They're supposed to be the meek. They're supposed to be compassionate. Proverbs says you do not rejoice in the calamity of another, and yet they say, I will laugh when you burn in hell. Well, they're actually disagreeing and disobeying their own scriptures when they say that to you. Area code 818. Thanks for waiting. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hi, I'm Rocio. My little sister committed suicide last year, and my family is Baptist. So my mom's side is Baptist, my dad's side is Catholic. And so they're all Latinos, so that's, religion is big in the Latino culture. So when she committed suicide, right afterwards, there was just lots of praying going on because they wanted to save her soul from going to hell. And it really bothered me that they believed this. And I've been an atheist for 10 years. They knew that they've known that I've been an atheist, and they kind of stopped with me. They kind of stopped even trying to convert me. Every now and then I get little snide remarks here and there. But it doesn't bother me. I also get emails from the family all the time, like chain letters about, praise the Lord and all this stuff. But that's a tangent. So right after my little sister passed away, we had her wake, and it was very interesting to see just my family just praying and praying and praying because they felt that she was going to hell because, with religion, they feel that, with religious people, they feel that, committing suicide is, it's a one way ticket to hell. And I couldn't help but just kind of feel sad for my family for thinking this. And I just started to wonder, I'm like, how do they find comfort in their own hearts? I don't know, how do they kind of stop?
Sure, well, they spend the rest of their lives tortured by the thought that they've, number one, failed as a parent, and number two, that this loved one is writhing in hell for all eternity.
Exactly.
Is it a Catholic culture that you come from?
Actually, it was mainly Baptist. it was my culture is very. I was raised Baptist when I was growing up, and then I was raised Catholic. It's just that my mom and dad kind of. My dad's Catholic, my mom was Baptist, so that was kind of a religious battle in my household.
Well, as I understand it, the Baptist culture, which I was heavily involved in, I had one parent who was very conservative and one who was more Assembly of God, so I got a taste, a pretty big one of both worlds. But I believe the Baptists say that when you die, if you are a non-believer, you cannot be prayed out of hell. It's game over. And as I understand it, the Catholic faith believes that you can be prayed for after you die. Your soul is still in play. So it breaks my heart to think about, parents who, first of all, I'm so sorry to hear about your sister. I don't know the circumstances, but I can't imagine, not only did they deal with the physical death, but now they are projecting onto the whole situation this phantom spiritual death. It's a terrible situation. I do hope that you guys are able to find a way through and maximize every moment that we have on this earth. It's the only one we've got. I appreciate your call very much. You take care of yourself in Oregon, okay?
Okay, thank you. You too.
All right. I had a letter from JR. It said, I just choose to keep it on the low key. I don't hide it, but I don't advertise it either. He's talking about his non-belief. I'm not trying to shove my beliefs down other people's throats, and in turn I ask for the same respect. That in itself was the argument that got my family to back off. Amanda says, I've taken a liking to telling those who declare that I'm going to hell, well, that's wonderful. I've always wanted to go to Michigan. Oh, no, Amanda, what are you doing? How much is a hotel there, she says. Don't be dissing Michigan. It's pretty country up there. Good people. In all seriousness, a coworker told me last night she was going to pray for me after I told her that demonic possession is nothing more than a psychological occurrence of someone who displays psychotic tendencies. It saddens me deeply that people still believe in this nonsense in an age of science and reason. I have a video that I'm finishing now that is going to release in just a few days. And it sort of acts like an open response to the people who continue to accost you with threats of hell. I'm not talking about people who are in their own circles and they are praying and concerned, genuinely concerned. I respect that. I respect it. You want to pray for me? Knock yourself out. You have a right to have a worldview and to practice it. Go ahead. Pray for me all you want. Give me your opinion. Give me your counsel. But once I have heard your counsel, once I get your opinion, once I've heard the argument and have assimilated it, you do not have a right to badger me. You don't have a right to show up on my door and ring my doorbell and call me at all hours of the day and night and drive me absolutely freaking crazy. You have got to respect boundaries. And there is a video that is going to release here in just a few days that serves as kind of an open response to that kind of treatment. If you are one of those people who continues to be accosted day after day after day, it's called Nothing to Talk About. And it may or may not work for you, but it's something you should look for here in the coming days on YouTube. And, of course, I will post a link everywhere. Area code 416. Hi, thanks for waiting. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hi, this is Steph.
Thanks for calling, Steph. What's going on?
My family isn't really religious, but my grandparents are, and it's really funny when I go and talk to them about religion, they always scream at me, Steph, you should believe in Jesus. You're going to go to hell. You're going to burn forever. And I can't really have like a conversation with them unless they penalize me for my belief.
What do you mean by penalize? What do they do? What are you talking about?
Well, they keep screaming at me like I'm a nobody. I don't know if your family is like that, but they go like, Staz, do you know how hell is like? Hell is bad. You're gonna burn there. Your skin's gonna melt off, and the devil's gonna, stab you with a pitchfork.
Did they actually like say these things to you?
Well, they do, but mostly they're nice people. I love them, but I can't really have a conversation with them without religion being brought up. And it saddens me because I can't say anything to them because they're old and, old people with their beliefs. You're not going to change them?
Yeah, you're not going to change their minds. Oh, I think. How old are you, may I ask?
I'm 14.
Okay. Well, I mean, one thing about you is you were under the guardianship and stewardship of adults who are charged to raise you, so you're going to need to be respectful and responsible as far as their guardianship. And then what you can do during this time is just continue to assimilate information. You continue to, even if they bring you to church or they have you read, if they do whatever, you can at least become an encyclopedia of good information, so then you can go and make good decisions when you become of legal age.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Take care of yourself. Thanks for calling.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Let's go to area code 617. Hi, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
This is Charles.
Charles, thanks for calling. Where you at?
I'm in Boston, Massachusetts right now.
Well, what's your take on this stuff?
I'm not unique, I don't think. Maybe, I don't know. But my parents are pretty accepting of my atheism, and they're newly found hard on religion ever since my dad lost his job, and we've had financial instability, which is one reason against religion, I've always thought. Once people always go to it once they're in trouble, but that's irrelevant. But yeah, my parents are pretty accepting, and I've always respected them for that, and they allow me to speak about it, and they always pray for me. They tell me I'm going to hell, but they do it in a very, respectful manner. They just don't feel like. I know how bad that sounds.
That's still got to be tough to hear,
Yeah, it's a little rough, but I understand that they're just telling me they hope that I'll convert so that I won't spend, eternity in damnation. And I'm fine with that. It's because they don't criticize me. They don't call me stupid. They don't call me crazy. And I just find it important to treat them with the same respect. And for people in my situation, I think it's just important to not tackle our parents, because they are our parents either way. Unless they're mistreating you all the time, you have to treat them with respect. And I find it important to respect their religious beliefs and such. And when they tell me that I'm going to hell and that they're praying for me, I thank them for praying for me, and I tell them it's unneeded. And it's a little strange to hear from your parents that you're going to hell, but I honestly think they don't mean any harm by it.
Well, I appreciate your call very much. It's something to consider. It just brought something, in fact, to my mind. I got to move on. I appreciate your call very much. There's two minds in the Protestant culture when it comes to salvation. There is once saved, always saved, which is usually the domain of the more conservative religious cultures. You're in the Baptist culture. I think Methodist is once saved, always saved, but you lean a little bit more Assembly of God and or Pentecostal, and they believe that your salvation can be taken away. So you accept Jesus into your heart, and then you decide for whatever reason that you ain't having any, then your salvation can be stripped from you. So your soul is in play. You're not totally saved. Meanwhile, the conservatives over here, the Baptists, say, well, whatever. You're just not going to get as many crowns, as many jewels in your crown. You're not going to have as big a mansion. You're not going to have as many blessings. You won't have as many angels. You won't have as much. You won't be as rewarded, but you're still safe forever. And so it's interesting. I wonder if parents would maybe start to assume the once saved, always saved mentality if they thought a child was involved as a coping mechanism, because the thought of the other is unthinkable. Aaron, thanks for waiting. You're calling the Thinking Atheist podcast. What's up?
I'm calling from Provo, Utah.
Mormon country. Yes. Talk to me about your situation.
I'm going to BYU, but my parents know that I don't really believe the culture. I'm 20. I decided to not go on a mission. We had a long fight about that, but all in all, we're on really good terms lately. And I guess with Mormonism, it's slightly different because there is a hell, but it's for very, very bad people. Like even Hitler, according to Mormonism, would go to a place that's better than here, but it would still be very bad in comparison. So I don't know how much you know about it, but there's the 3 degrees of glory, and the Mormons go to the best one, and that's their general view. So for them, it's slightly different. It's both me and my sister have left the church, and we both let them know that we don't believe it, but we don't say that we're. It's kind of one of those things that's just not spoken about, and every once in a while I'll air my concerns with religion, and they'll try and argue it, and then we get into an argument for a few hours, and then we all walk away a little heated, and then we all eventually come back later and just have a good time as a family. So I think it's slightly different with Mormon culture. As much as it can be painful for them, I don't think it's quite as painful as it is for other religions. If that
I don't know. I mean, I've seen some ex-Mormons who have been excommunicated from not just the church but their family. Did you have to send them the letter of, I would like to be removed from the church rolls? Did you go through a formal process of removing yourself from the church?
No, not really. I just kind of stopped going.
But you and your family still get together. It's kind of an uneasy peace, but you have peace together, yes?
Yeah, exactly.
Aaron, thanks for the call.
So,
Appreciate you being part of the show.
Maybe my family's great, but, yeah, have a good day.
All right, thank you very much. 347, thanks for waiting. Hi, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
This is Elohim, brother. How are you?
I'm well, Elohim. What's going on? What's your opinion on this topic today?
Okay, first let me say that me and you can have a whole weekly series on this. I have such respect for an atheist, though I have a firm belief in God. Why? Because, I did a lot of things what the Bible said do religiously. Prayed and fasted, kept Sabbaths, our holy days, you name it, I've done it. And ain't seen no fruits of anything. And I am looked upon as one now for my friends and peers as I'm going crazy because I'm free thinking now. I've come look and said, hold up, all this stuff I've been made to believe through the years and do, there's no fruit of it really. And I'm saying this to your listeners to say this. It is sad that religion has been used to manipulate people. All I would like to say to your listeners is my advice is hope that your family members will one day be able to see things the way you see things, because you're in a state where you are a free thinker, where you can see through certain things, and it's a big matrix, and it's hard and it's touchy. It was touchy for me to see my grandmother go into a Jehovah's Witness religion, because it hurts me to see old people here in New York City knocking on doors, and they believe that if they don't do this, they're going to hell. And you see them with arthritis, and it's in the cold, man, in the winter. They walking around afraid because they think if they don't do this, they're going to go to hell. And my grandmother got swept in something like that. So it's it's touchy, and all I can say to you is just hope that your family members can see their way through this matrix, because I feel your pain, and if they're attacking you, because you see differently, they're going to do it to anyone who does. All I can say is count your blessing that you are able to see, and maybe one day your light will shine unto them. That's what I like to say, brother, because this is real touchy.
Well, I got confused at the beginning of this call, so bear with me. But you said you do believe in God?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. But yet I respect the atheists. That's why I'm telling you, me and you can have a whole week of a series, because I have a strong belief in God. But yes, and I know God, but I know that the religions and the belief that people are under it are false, because I've did all these things. I came into knowing spirituality with God and myself through another means.
Okay, well, hang on. Do you accept or reject the Bible as true?
I say that the Bible has been tampered with. I feel that a lot of scriptures, because I read Hebrew, so there's a lot of things that's in the English part of the Bible. When you go into the original Hebrew, you'll see that's not even there, and that's what I mean about religion. There's a lot of people who read just the English Bible, and they take what's written in English for the Word of God. But
okay, well, hang on. I'm going to go one point at a time here very quickly, Elohim. Mm-hmm. If I was the almighty, omnipotent, omniscient, benevolent God of the universe, and I knew that eternity was on the line, and the rule book that I provided to my children was not accurate, and I knew that so many billion of them didn't happen to read Hebrew, why would I not, as a compassionate God rescuing them from hell, make sure that they have good information? You know what I'm saying? I mean, why would he allow an inaccurate Bible to float around under his name?
And that's why I respect the atheists.
All right, I appreciate your honesty and your call. That's good stuff. New York, huh? I have this mental picture of little old ladies out there in 0 degrees, freezing themselves to death, handing out religious tracts to everybody. Breaks my heart, man. Thanks for the call. I appreciate your participation today.
You're welcome, brother.
I had a letter from Carm. Carm says, if anyone with a Facebook account knows, anyone who's interested in finding out about you can view your wall and see how you've responded to posts by your friends and your groups. When a relative of mine was new to Facebook and asked to be a friend, I was concerned that she could be upset about my activity with atheist groups and friends because of her strong Christian beliefs. I'd never had the talk with her, but I've had with most of my relatives. I added her as a friend because if I didn't, that would have been an issue. Carm continues. I received a private email from her this past week. This was not done on Facebook, which was respectful. The subject said this, your atheist posts. It started with the fact that she thought I was seeking the truth, all caps, the truth. It went on for several paragraphs with her personal testimony, her encounter with the Holy Spirit, that Jesus is Lord and died for her sins. She then used my 16-month-old grandson to make a point. If God forbid anything ever happened to him, the Lord would take him straight to heaven, and unless I was saved, I would be eternally estranged from him. She continued, Christianity is a personal relationship with Jesus. It's not a religion. Isaiah 53, written 700 years before Christ was born, predicts his coming. I need to read a book by Josh McDowell more than a carpenter, and so on. I'm sure you've heard it all before. She viewed some of the things I liked and commented on, and they were blasphemy. I think it was some of your videos. Oh, that's nice. And Pat Cundell's latest. I offered her some rational thoughts about why I didn't believe and told her that I respect her right to believe whatever she likes. Carm continues. I told her that she could remove me from Facebook. She didn't want to do that. She's truly concerned for me and my eternal soul. We agreed to disagree. We're still friends. And she's responding to the family photos, etc. My heart goes out to those who become estranged from relatives. I very sympathetically view people who believe more strongly in God than they do in the fabric of society, their families and friends, which are all we really have. Thanks for the letter. Area code 228. Hi, thanks for waiting. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
This is Brian. How you doing today?
Excellent, Brian. We're talking about families who think you're going to hell. What do you think?
Well, luckily, my direct family doesn't necessarily believe that, though I think my dad would have taken my coming out better if I'd have told him I was gay. But I have a lot of extended family that, frankly, would have flipped their wig had they found out. And luckily, when I did finally become very open on my Facebook page, I got support from someone I never would have expected. I've got an uncle who is one of those fire and brimstone kind of ministers, or at least he was. And apparently me being open about my atheism is something that he actually supports and defends me on, which really surprised me. So don't lose faith, everybody. There are family members that you won't expect.
Why does he support you? Do you think he secretly harbors some unbelief, or does he just support your right to hold whatever worldview you want? Where does his support come from?
I believe about 20 or 30 years ago, he actually came out of the closet as a homosexual, and he actually faced a lot of really bad flack from his family at first, I believe. I'm not entirely sure how badly that went down, but I do know that him and his partner have been together from the beginning. They were some of the earliest medicated AIDS patients, and he's just been facing a lot of personal grief from that. So I guess whenever he saw me kind of catching some flack once I started being really, really open via my Facebook page and other things about how I am and posting my own thoughts and opinions, he actually jumped to my aid way better than a lot of people. And
a preacher. Go figure.
I believe he's a minister, actually. I'm not exactly sure what tag you want to attach.
Reverend, bishop, minister you get. He's a spiritual leader. Do you know what type of church he's a minister of?
I don't even remember. I want to say he was Baptist, but I'm not sure. I know he was one of those fire and brimstone, you blink in church wrong, you're going straight to hell, do not pass go, do not collect $200 kind of
a gay minister in a Baptist church just seems so wildly improbable. I wonder where I wonder what type of Baptist. All I'm saying is there was a huge rift in the Baptist church. This is back when I was a believer, and it continues today about the role of homosexuality. Can a spiritual leader be gay? You know, they're still fighting about whether women should be behind the pulpit. Talk about backward, you know. So that's fascinating to me. Brian, I got to move on. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it.
Have a good one. Bye.
Daniel Dennett actually has a study where he compiled, and these statistics are anonymous, but he compiled, and he continues to compile, a list of people who are behind the pulpit who do not believe in God. And they remain pastors as head of a church for a variety of reasons. And apparently these anonymous, they filled out these surveys anonymously. Some of it is cultural. Some of it is, I'm 50 years old. This is the only thing I know how to do. I can't walk away. I've got to feed my family. I've got to provide, you know. This is my identity. It would shatter everyone around me. There's a litany of reasons that they continue. So imagine that the thousands of people who would be attending churches, and the person who was leading the sermon, speaking for 40 minutes at a time, some churches an hour or more at a time, didn't believe a word of what they were saying. Wouldn't that be fascinating? And really kind of sad. 347, thanks for waiting. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hi, it's excuse me. It's Philippa from New York.
Philippa, thanks for calling. What's going on?
No problem. I just want to say, I grew up in a Pentecostal household, and hell was the great motivator back then. And it was to the point where the pastor of the church that we all looked as this, you know, he's a step below God, basically. And he used to actually say from the pulpit that he was a foot, you know, he had a foot in hell. That all that he did was just enough to barely get him out of hell. So that would put us all in a position where like, wow, you know, if this guy's barely scratching hell, you know, we're in there, and we have to do everything we can to try to. I mean, how much is like it was never enough. If you prayed an hour, you had to pray 2 hours. It was that kind of thing. It was like that. It was used as a motivator.
It's all like fire insurance at that level, isn't it? People basically who are they go to church on Christmas and Easter. They don't really pray. They certainly don't know or read their Bible. They just sort of invoke God from time to time, just the bare minimum to make sure they get that little pass and don't have to worry about hell. But the rest of their life is exactly like the life of a non-believer. Ironic, isn't it?
Right. But I've noticed a trend that's changed. As I've gotten older, and the church has gotten more sophisticated now, and they kind of don't talk about that anymore. It's harder to scare an adult with hell. Their new scare tactic seems to be real-life tragedy and issues that you may go through. Like if someone lost their job and was destitute, they'd use that. Well, if you don't want that to happen to you, you better serve God better. Or for instance, the worst example was when I was in church. This was during the waning years while I was in church. This guy who was a pretty devoted follower. He had 6 sons. One of the sons died under mysterious circumstances. So they basically used that as, look, if a man like him, God took away his son because he wasn't looking for God the right way, you know, you got to keep looking. You don't want your kid to die. So, and I remember one of my nieces came up to me. Thank God she's an agnostic now, but at the time she came up to me, and my 13-year-old was a newborn, and I was just visiting. I was already out of church, and she told me, Uncle, you got to come back to church. You don't want Joey to die, do you? And I'm like, wow.
That just seems like they're preying on I mean, what a horrible, manipulative thing to say.
Yeah.
You don't want your child to die, do you?
Right.
Horrible.
Exactly.
You know, I think they see it as their way of winning the argument. If they can't, they have the last word.
Right.
Someone died, went to hell, and the living person gets to dance on their grave. Essentially, is what
it's like, see what we've been telling you. See,
I had 2 quick observations real fast. I heard you say "thank God" in conversation. I want you to know, anyone who heard that, I do it too. as a reflex. You go, oh my God.
I say God bless you to people. It's not. I don't really believe their spirit is leaving them. It's just one of those things, you know. I
try to remove those things from my vocabulary just because I think it's probably healthy. But as a cultural thing, sometimes you'll say it. Oh, thank God. I don't mean thank God. The second thing is when you said you came from a Pentecostal background, I have a show coming up in 2 weeks. It's called Weird Beliefs and Crazy Cults. Now, I had a few years that I was deeply immersed, not immersed personally, but I was witness to the Pentecostal culture. So I got to ask you. Mm-hmm. Was it pretty wild? I mean, did you guys do the organ and the tambourines and the speaking in tongues and the crying and the wailing?
I already have a laundry list of things for that podcast that you're probably going to have to cut me off because I have a laundry list of weird and wacky things. I literally started putting down, me and, another one of your listeners, Jose, we actually came up together in this wackiness.
Wow.
And yes, that exists. The tambourines and the music, the prophecies. Basically, people getting up in the middle of the service, stopping everything, and prophesying. And it's a whole bunch of wacky things.
All right. Well, organize all your stuff, and then we'll see if we can get you through here in a couple of weeks to talk about that. Okay. And I got to move on. I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
No problem. Take care.
It is going to be a fun show. And I take heat for mocking much of what I do in content. When it comes to human beings, when it comes to people, I really think compassion needs to be our calling card. But when it comes to the actual beliefs, the doctrine, the stories, the myths, the tales that are to be told, those are fair game for mockery. I'm just going to warn you, the Weird Beliefs and Crazy Cult show is going to be full of mockery because there's some jacked up, bizarre, strange, crazy stuff out there. We will take a little bit of time and talk about the Pentecostal experience. And there are a few stories that I'm going to tell you that, trust me, if you are not familiar with that culture, the Pentecostal culture, you're going to think you went to the moon. You're going to think you're on another planet. But the things we're going to talk about are real, and they did happen, and they will freak you out. Michael said, I grew up in small-town Alabama. My family was deeply Baptist. They weren't even allowed to be a part of the Southern Baptist Convention due to their aggressive nature with hellfire, brimstone, and hateful preaching. Well, that's radical, man. The Southern Baptist Convention didn't want you to be a part of it. The church community was 80% family, and I have a lot of aunts and uncles. Church was like school, 3 days a week, including homework, usually in the form of essays about characters in the Bible. Michael continues. After 10 years of indoctrination, I joined the military and I began a 4-year transition to foxhole atheist. I say that because it was right about the time I was deploying to Iraq with the Marine Corps. I didn't see anything horrible while there, even though my mother blames the military for my deconversion. I was and still am an air traffic controller, even though I'm a civilian now, so my job keeps me indoors. Anyway, by the time I left the desert, I was officially a non-believer. Luckily, my wife and I went through the same changes together, and she came out with the same stance. Religion is BS. Now, how do I tell my family? We knew it would be bad, but it had to be done, and we could no longer live a lie. The first conversation was quick and painful. We thought we'd been through the worst of it. It can only get better, right? Wrong. Michael continues. I have since been disowned by the church, including 90% of my family. I found out the church had revoked my membership. Not sure why I still had one, but whatever. So I printed out and mailed in a de-baptism certificate. My mother, father, brother, and a couple cousins still talk to me, but it's usually quick and nice or long and exhausting, depending on my militant mood. My mother says I have become intolerant. I agree. And I mock the irony of her actually saying something like that. I think I'm only intolerant when people say something stupid, contradicting science, or do something stupid like join a ridiculous Facebook group called Put Jesus Back in Public School, which I will today very quickly call out the ignorance of. I'm militant some days, Michael says, but it takes a 6% event to put me in an offensive stance, and I'll likely remain that way for a week or more. Geez, a week? Luckily, we found solace in your Facebook page and podcast, along with many other YouTubers and internet pages. Thank you so much for what you do. I'm sure it makes you feel good to know that you are still an inspiration, even without a God or gods. So here we are, alone and frustrated in Wyoming, trying to raise a secular family. We have to start a new family tree, and we couldn't be more excited to break the cycle. One more call. Let's talk to area code 407. Hi, what's your name?
Hey, it's Nam.
What do you have for us today? Do you have an opinion on this subject?
Well, I just want to say that my family, they weren't really religious. My mom, I wasn't raised in a Christian background. I was raised in a Buddhist background. It's not like most of the stories I hear, but so my mom doesn't really say anything about that, but neither does my family. Like, my mom told me that when they came, I'm Vietnamese, so after the war, my family, they came here, and Grandpa, they didn't want us to go on welfare, so they converted to Catholicism for education, money, housing, all that good stuff. And I don't really am really vocal about it at family gatherings because, I just want to have fun, but I'm pretty sure they know my aunts and uncles, but they just don't really care. They still love me for who I am. And hearing all these stories of families that say that you're a bad person for not believing it just really hurts, kind of. When that doesn't happen to me, I don't know how that feels to have a family member basically look down on you and point at you and say all these things. It's damaging, devastating even.
It's very sad. Thanks for the call. I appreciate you being part of the show. I think the telling thing is that if you are around someone who insists that you think like they do in order for you to be friends, you got a problem. How about being secure enough in your own worldview so that you can be in a room with someone who disagrees with you and you agree to disagree? You might even have some heated discussions on the subject, but it's not a deal breaker. And, oh, you don't agree? Well, I'm deleting you from my speed dial tonight. I think that's very telling. Let me finish the show with a letter I got from a longtime supporter of the Thinking Atheist website and podcast, and he has been a tremendous source of support. And he listens to these podcasts on a regular basis. And I got a letter from him a few months ago, and I saved it. I just hung on to it, and I asked him for permission to share because it really reminded me that this is a conversation worth having even with our families. And if a mom and dad believe in heaven and hell and God and all, Satan and all of those things, it's still worth perhaps including them in the conversation, or at least not giving up on them. Derek sent me an email, and it said this: my parents are both in their 60s and have been lifelong Lutherans. They dragged me kicking and screaming to church until I was about 16, and they surrendered the fight. To this day, they never miss a Sunday at church. My mom plays piano and sings in the church choir. My dad has usually been a church elder. They've been aware that my brother and I both now identify as atheists, but I haven't been able to talk to them about it. They've lived far away from me since I graduated high school, and it's rare that I get to see them. Religion has never come up with my dad and talks on the phone, and when I've tried to discuss it with my mom, she's just shut down and very deliberately changed the subject. They have been unconditionally loving and incredibly supportive parents, and I don't harbor any resentment toward them for indoctrinating me into their religion. They are two of the best people I know. They are critical thinkers. So much that I never understood why they hadn't turned their skeptical lenses on religion to see it for what it is and eliminate it from their lives. This past week, my parents drove down from Kansas to Alabama to visit me for the holiday. Last night, my dad was taking a nap, my mom was crocheting, and I was listening to your podcast on my phone with headphones. My mom kept talking, and I kept having to pull one of my earbuds out to hear her. Eventually, I got frustrated, and something clicked in my head. They forced their views on me for 16 years. It won't hurt them to share in mine for an hour. Derek says, I plugged my phone into my guitar amp and played your podcast out loud. My dad soon woke up and came to join us. They sat and listened to the entire thing with me, for all I know hearing the falsehood of religion discussed for the first time in their lives. Afterward, we had a fantastic discussion. We were up until 1 a.m. talking about religion. It turns out my dad is much more of a free thinker than I ever would have imagined. He's actually argued with fundamentalists that the age of the earth is 4.5 billion years and not 6,000. He doesn't believe the creation story or the Noah's Ark story. He was able to shoot them full of holes on his own. I piled on with everything I had and laid out a pretty exhaustive argument against absolutely everything. Even though my mom wasn't able to articulate a defense, she did listen and take it all in, which I thoroughly appreciated. She did concede it wouldn't be right for her God to send her son to eternal torture in hell for rejecting her theology. And while I don't know how much belief my dad is still harboring, he is much closer to seeing things as I do than I ever would have thought. And maybe our conversation even edged him closer to completely opening his eyes and shaking off the delusion. I just wanted to thank you for the amazing work you are doing, Derek says. You come across as so very humble, understanding, and thoughtful in all of your communications. Very kind, thanks. And it really makes your message palatable for people at all different places along their journey. I loved knowing I could play your podcast for my parents because you would maintain the high ground and I wouldn't have to defend your character or anything you said. Your podcast was the impetus for the most authentic and inspiring conversation I have ever had with my parents. He references a letter that I received. I mentioned earlier, a few months back, that I had received one of a litany of long letters from my own mother, begging me to see the truth. They are religious, I am not. And Derek continues referencing that. He says, I know that your mom's email threw you for a loop this week, leaving you very obviously longing for some validation that you're not wasting your time trying to explain your position to people who listen but refuse to hear. You never know when someone's desperation to convert you could actually be them struggling to maintain a belief that's slipping away. It could be that your articulate rejection of theist claims is the ultimate challenge to their faith, and they're pleased to convince you are actually their last effort to hold on to their own belief. On some level, I really think they know they are deluding themselves, and you're forcing that uncertainty to the surface and making your case. I think someone desperate to convince you of their God is really desperate to convince themselves. Keep doing what you're doing and don't ever doubt that you are making a difference. You are on the tip of the spear, along with some other great men that you and I admire. You're part of a movement that will radically transform this world. Stay the course. It is just a matter of time. Derek, thank you so much for the kind words, for the email, for the encouragement. It's an encouragement to us all. Live truthfully. You never know who might be watching. Have a great week.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter. Watch dozens of original videos on the Thinking Atheist YouTube channel. And visit our website for resources, links, contact information, the editor's blog, and more. TheThinkingAtheist.com.